August 9th, 2022, meeting with the Anderson County Charter Commission. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Fritz. Yes. Commissioner Smallridge.
Here.
Commissioner Isbell.
Here.
Commissioner White. Commissioner Meade.
Here.
Commissioner Bochamp. Chairman Stonesifer.
Present.
Stephen 4 and 4. Well, Stephen Lerner, I'm not so absent, he's not, so it's 4 and 4 to 3.
Since we have an active resignation, we have a 7-member body, so 4. This time, would you please stand for the prayer? Led by Commissioner Isbell and the pledge led by Commissioner Small.
Our most gracious and heavenly Father, thank you so much for your Son, Jesus Christ, Father God, and the gift of salvation that you've given us, Father God. Father God, we ask that you'll just guide us and open our minds, Father God, and our hearts as we serve the people of this great county. In your name we pray. Amen.
First thing we do is properly place the flag where we proceed.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to say a special thanks to Annette for a quick turnaround on minutes.
You're here.
I hope everybody's read them. Any corrections or objections to the August 1st minutes?
No. Motion to approve the minutes of August 1st.
Motion by Commissioner Lee,
second.
second Commissioner Smallridge. Any comments or corrections? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign? Motion carries. Okay, this time, appearance of citizens. Do you have anyone that would like to speak to the group?
I apologize, I'm right behind you here, so
All right.
I'll stand right over here, and I'm going to be behind somebody. My name's Harold Edwards. I live at 156 Henderson Bend Road, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37931. Although I am an Anderson County resident. A couple things, a couple of my concerns about the charter. First of all, I am opposed to term limits for elected officials. I favor term limits at the federal level. I think at the local level, I think the people have the right to exercise term limits through a regular election. So I'd like to go on record as being opposed to implementing term limits on the charter. The second thing I would like is to have a party designation for all officers. Republican, Democrat, certainly can be independent, but certainly party affiliation. We could have, if we did not have that, we could have, the Communist Party is actually a recognized party in this country. And someone could maybe hide behind that. I don't know that they would, but anyway, I am for party affiliation designation. So those are the only two items that I wanted to address the commission on.
Well, I appreciate you coming, and I can tell you that I think the legislature and local party parties have taken care of the second one.
Right, I think so.
The first part is, we don't have term limits in this charter.
Oh, okay. There was some talk around, how talk certain
Right.
things, but I just wanted to exercise my, on that. But I appreciate the job that you all have done, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a number of rumors that went around about this. Like, I had some constables come to me and say that the Constables Association in Tennessee can put out that in Anderson County, if the charter gets passed, it'll eliminate all the constables. That's not true either. The first thing a lot of people don't know, constables are not county officials. They're state officers. They're just elected by a district in the counties. And the districts are different than the county commission districts. There's 2 county commission districts per constable district. But I had to tell him, you better go back and tell these folks that's simply not correct. Constables are state operated thing. We do mention them, that they exist in our charter, because we have to kind of list all the officials in the county. But that, nor have we added term limits. Now, term limits is allowed under a charter form of government, okay? But that would take all the significant effort it would take to change a charter is fairly difficult. And it would take substantial effort to try to impose that. I kind of feel the same way as you. When it comes to what I refer to as citizen legislatures that make the big money like the county commissioners make, I mentioned several times that they put us on minimum wage, it would double our salaries. When it comes to people going to Washington and staying there 40 years, I'm absolutely opposed to that kind of stuff. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming in and mentioning it.
Yes. Really appreciate it.
Have we had anybody come forward supporting term limits?
Not one.
In fact, the only times that term limits were addressed by this group, and some of this goes back quite a few years, because we've worked at this a long time. We had a big long pause in the middle, because we tried to say we didn't want to do it at all. The courts ordered us that we wouldn't conform to something. But initially, 7 of the 8 people elected came from kind of one side, okay? And the person that was kind of on the term limit side, at his first meeting, which was actually the second meeting in this group, he actually admitted then that he didn't think that at a county level term limits made a lot of sense. And then after that, the next time it was mentioned was discussions about how we didn't want to include term limits in any charter that we put out. And then, like the lawyer was saying, we have not had a single person in all of these years come to a meeting and propose or request or even mention term limits. Not a single one. In every one of these meetings are publicized, published, public meetings, and for the most part, they've been on TV. And so there has been no demand. There has been no demand for that at all. And so this group has to turn. If nobody comes at all, you have to assume that there's not much interest.
You look at your email today.
Yes. There's been some talk here starting yesterday. But
Survey.
A survey, but nobody's attended a meeting. And the only reason I got a copy of that survey is because a member of the party forwarded me a copy of the letter from Myra that I didn't even get. It wasn't addressed to me, but I've been a long time member of the Republican Party, and at one time was the chair.
I think there was some kind of push or mention of term limits originally when they were talking about having a referendum.
Oh, yeah.
Charter, that was one of their main.
In fact, that was the only thing they mentioned.
But, yeah, that's, okay.
And in addition to the county commission, like the road commissioner, if you got a road commissioner doing a really good job, why do you let the people decide they want to replace them in an election? But why limit the person's terms or a person that's a really good county clerk, or a person that's a real good finance person, or somebody that's really good at registered deeds operations, that kind of stuff. I see no reason to put term limits on those kind of offices. And besides, we've had lots of turnover in the county commission.
That's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. I'm not asking for a vote tonight, because we have more people here. But one of the things is about, at first we talked about not staggering, but we have 7 new commissioners coming on, and we actually turn over commission pretty frequently. So I would, and like I say, I'm not making a motion, but it's for thought about staggering county commission elections to go like this.
Yeah, in fact, we addressed that in a couple of meetings, and the state law binds us from doing it. It just says, county commission, we elect a 4-year term starting at this point. And the way it was interpreted in the J, you talked to somebody, I think, was the fact that the 4-year terms being specified for county commission under state law.
But they can be staggered.
It doesn't give you a chance to, I mean, you can have people going every 4 years, but at some point you have to have an election after 2 years
Yes.
to start that sequence. And the state law doesn't appear to allow it. Am I interpreting that properly?
I'm not familiar with what you're speaking about. I mean, we've always said, when it came up here, that the county commission could move for staggered terms. But if it gets to the point where we need research on that, we'll get it done. I know it happens in a lot of municipalities and school boards. I can't recall a county commission right off the bat that does it. But we do have a county general election every 2 years, so it is feasible. As far as
Is Knox County not staggered commission?
yeah, they are.
And if it can be done at all, it can be done under term as well.
That may be an area that's just silent. So that would be fair game for the charter.
And effectively, it could represent CA and CB. Is how it's set up, like if you're a senior, because at some point, somebody would have to run it 2 years.
Right.
Or the one that's been on the longest, the senior would not have to run that first 2-year term. It could be set up like that into the CA and CB.
If I remember, I'm the one that brought that up. We didn't get a motion because they liked the fact that since we had 2 in each district, that the top 2 road getters would be elected. They didn't want to go to CA and CB. Was that not the
Yeah, if you
discussion?
went to A and B, you could potentially end up with somebody that had substantially less votes be a winner than the top 2.
You don't have to have CD and CB. You can, they can decide which 4 districts would be elected to a 2-year term and which 4 would be a 4-year term to start with.
Or,
And that would automatically stagger.
I think, we had it, Gavin put it in there to begin with, it was like that, and correct me if I'm wrong, CA and CB, but the senior commissioner served a 4-year term, the junior commissioner would have to run again in 2 years, that's how you get started.
yeah, that's what we had in there originally, get it started.
I'd be in favor of that more than having an A and B, because that way each election.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You're not gonna make a motion.
Not that we get more people. I just really want to, discussion. But when we get to our next meeting, I'll make that motion.
I can't really look at that, maybe it was John Green.
I'll turn it over to you.
Gavin, you want to point out the changes you made, and then I'll go through the commissioner input here.
Yeah, just really quickly, there's only 2. Section 4.12 on page 24. at the top there, the officers listed in this Article 4 shall be elected and appointed in accordance with the Constitution. Formerly, it said elected by the people or the voters of Anderson County, Tennessee. I was just rereading this and rereading it, and that's something I found there that is potentially problematic. As you know, we list the clerk and master within Section 408. That's, as we know, an appointed position. So, my goal here was to just make it as consistent with the state law as possible, as consistent with state law as possible. Shall be elected or appointed in accordance with the Constitution, general laws of the state of Tennessee, and the charter. So I think that solves the problem.
Yeah, I personally agree with that change. It adds the clarity that's important, because we do have some people that are appointed.
I think somebody sent that in to me, if I'm not mistaken.
The next change that I've done is on page 40, section 809. Rereading this section. Formerly, the second sentence in section 809 listed there, Article 7. Former Article 7 was the article on elections, which we scrapped and went with section 412 to follow state law. So I've included Article 4, section 412 there, relating to elections, shall apply to the election of all officers required to be elected under this charter. So, general elections in the year 2026. That's simply replacing Article 7 with Article 4, section 4.
And it before the whole intent was to comply with state law, and this just actually specifies the specific section of state law addressing it. So that's a good change.
Other than general spacing and checking of typos, I have nothing further.
Questions you have? Okay, I'll go over a few comments we've got from commissioners here. I appreciate everyone that mentioned this stuff to me. Certainly send it by email, it helps a lot. But if you have anything, please continue to send it to me. Section 201, under legislative branch, second sentence, add the and enforce after adopt. That's, we'll read now, the legislative power of the county includes all lawful authority to adopt and enforce ordinances, emergency ordinances, resolutions, governing the operation of government. So that is the change there. Section 202, legislative power, said comptroller of the treasury. It had a recommendation to say Tennessee comptroller of the treasury. Just to make some clarity there. 204, legislative body salary. Hang on, let's go through, I've got some marks here. I had a question on, getting ahead of myself, 202, gee whiz, that's a big section. J talks about the legislative body having the authority, a resolution to remove and discharge such members. That's not members of the county commission or legislative body. That's members of the appointed boards and committees that we do. We've got a couple that people, and we certainly appreciate all volunteers. That's how county government works best. And we love to have anybody that wants to be involved in county government. But we have a couple of committees that have a terrible time getting a quorum. And some people are just habitually absent. I think they've lost interest or whatever the case, they may be ill, but they just don't show. And it's quite embarrassing when we've got another citizen petitioning for something, whatever the case may be, and we can't get a quorum together. and they're there ready to present their stuff, and sometimes they're there with an attorney. And so, what this new section would do, and that's at the very last sentence of J, the legislative body shall have the authority by resolution to remove and discharge all such members for good cause shown. And I'd like to add, just on my own there, and pursuant to the rules of the county commissioner, the legislative body. The legislative body does have its own set of rules that are amended from time to time. We have a rules committee that thoroughly vets those recommendations. So I'd like to add that in there if you don't mind, because
Right at the end of
yeah,
J.
good cause shown is sort of vague. It's certainly subjective, but if we put in there that it's pursuant to or subject to the legislative body rules, I think that helps a lot. So anyway, that's my specific recommendation there.
So then it would be required to be in the rules.
Right. It says, or you could put an or there, but I certainly like to have something that's not so subjective. I'd like to have a provision in our county rules that if you miss 3 out of 5 meetings, and this is just a recommendation, or whatever the case is, that I think that is certainly per se that you've lost interest in it. And, I'd like if y'all have interest in this, that's fine, but I do believe some of our committees are suffering, and we need to get people that have a true interest. I have people mention to me quite frequently that they'd like to be involved in county government, and I can tell them to see a net and fill out an application when something becomes available, apply for it. But I'd love to see more people that are actively involved in county government, but we want people that are going to show up at the meetings and not even tell us about it, not come. So that last little section will be referred to the rules committee, and the county legislative body rules committee will set standards such as certain amount of meetings missed and other things. So that's my recommendation.
So that section would be stand with pursuant to.
Or
legislative
good cause
body.
shown or pursuant to the.
How would that be, tell us how it'd be worded, then we get a motion in a second.
Just like I said, good cause shown or pursuant to legislative body rules.
Well, I like that, being more specific, I think.
I do too.
We have to take action sometime, have something in there that spells out. So I'll move to adopt the language that you just proposed.
I second that.
Got a motion in a second. Change the language in the
Section J.
section J of
202.
2.02. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Smallridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Isbell,
Aye.
Commissioner Meade,
Aye.
and Chairman Stonesifer.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. 204. Okay, this is a question that came up, and this comes from the statute that affects judges' salary. And it's talking about the county commission setting their salary. I want to make sure that what I'm hearing from the majority of members of this body is that the county commission cannot change their salary during the term they're serving. They have to change it for the subsequent term. You follow me?
Yep.
That the county commission can't come in first day and say, okay, we all want a $500 raise. Okay, you have to change it, and that would be effective for the next 4-year term. Is everybody clear on that? So,
And if we went to 2-year cycle, we'll still
right.
have to adjust that. It wouldn't affect the people that were currently in a term.
couldn't.
So if 2 years later, somebody's replaced in an election?
Then, the salary adjustment would apply.
Yeah.
But you can't vote yourself a raise, it's not.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
And unless you vote for the county commission salary to move up, be increased, or whatever, decreased, or whatever the case may be, but it would only apply during the next term, is what I'm
Yep.
trying to say. Does everybody understand that? Do you wanna take these one by one, or you want us to get all these changes and bring them back to you?
On that one, why couldn't you just say,
I think
you
that's
can
state
stick
law.
with the 4 years, but just tie it to the governor's election? It's the only time it can be approved. And that way, if you have staggered terms, it take care of it.
I believe the current resolution that we're going by is that we get a raise the year following
Right,
the state employees getting a raise. And it becomes automatic, it just kind of keeps you up with inflation without having.
Oh, that's already there?
Yeah. Well, what we do is, the county commission salary has not been changed since 2014. In that time, I think Commissioner Fritz made the motion that, it would be commensurate with the state adjustment for officials and employees. So there's a state adjustment of percentage. So even if county commission got a 5% raise, it's not really that much, but it means a lot to the officials that it affects. But it's 5% of whatever you get here. So, but that's when you, that's what resolution 14-8 509 says, that you'll be adjusted when the state salaries come out for elected officials. It'll be the next year.
Which one are you talking about?
I'm looking at 204.
That's where I am, yeah. How do you think it needs to be changed?
I'm gonna let Gavin play with the wording there, just to make sure. It could be I've got here for subsequent terms only, that's my notes. But something along those lines, that they can't fix the salary for the current term. It can only apply to the next term. So if you play with the language, good, that sounds great. 207. Got a comment here. It says, 207 says removal of members of the legislative body. Now, we're talking about county commissioners here. A member of the legislative body may be removed from office according to the laws of the state of Tennessee. That is basically referring to ouster, I would think. But we've got a recall provision in here that so far has made it through several steps of the vetting. So the recommendation here was to just add "or this charter," something along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a very steep threshold to recall, but it is in here. Otherwise, we're stuck with the ouster laws.
Well, could you just say either by ouster or recall? Or would that be-
I like the laws of the state of Tennessee, myself.
Yeah.
That's
Because they
what-
could change.
Yes,
That's what it says, so you don't
right,
change.
exactly, but you add at the end "or this charter."
Okay.
The question I got was, so what about there was a referendum? This is much broader than county commission. If this passes, there's a referendum process, certainly to amend the charter. We've got that. Could a referendum say remove an officer? I don't think that's what we intended, because we've got the recall provision already specified in there, and the threshold amount of votes kicking in for the petition and the actual voting at an election. So I'm not sure you could, or I wouldn't think you could, have a referendum to remove a county official, because several of them are constitutional offices to begin with. And you see what I'm saying?
Well, that's what the recall is. It ends up being
in a sense, but it's not following the same referendum process that's in here. It's a different process, remember, it's different threshold numbers.
Yeah.
So, I just want to shore that up. It's a good question. What happens about the citizens coming forward with a referendum to remove a county official? Because remember, that threshold level on the referendum is lower than the recall, I believe is the way it's written. But so that's something we need to clear up. I don't think that was ever our intent to have an official removed by referendum. It would be by recall only or ouster. But anyway, that's my point. You can follow me on that.
So we don't need to put recall in this one anywhere?
Yeah, recall's already in here.
I know it's
Yeah,
in, but I'm talking about in 2.07.
It's got, yeah, the addition was, or this charter.
Or this charter, which would include.
Okay.
Which would include the recall mechanism.
Okay.
But am I right, this is only talking about the county commission?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is
But
legislative body.
When you think about the question though, it could apply in a broader context. And, so I don't think that's what we ever intended. I think what we ever intended was it would be either ouster or the recall provision in here.
Yeah, do we need a motion? I'll make a
Just
motion.
let him get the specific language down, because a lot of these things, we're talking about, you don't know the language that's good. None of us know the language he's gonna put in, and we'll vote on when we come back, just like we always do, after the edits are made, and he can take care of the proper language and make sure we all agree with that. Okay, on vacancy in office, I had a question on, if such vacancy occurs within 30 days prior to the next general election, the person so selected by the legislative body to fill that vacancy shall serve the remainder of the term of that legislative body seat. Well, at that point, what it's saying is, you're having, the county commission is having, there's no time for a poll petition, there's no time to meet the election dates, and county commission is having to go through the statutory vacancy process. And we've got that set forth, so that's how that's working. County commission, when there's a vacancy, we publicize that vacancy, it goes to the floor of the county commission, they nominate who they want to, they can nominate somebody at the meeting. In fact, we'll see that with our new charter District 3 member. So that's a statutory process, and that's basically the law, isn't it? It's how you've got it decided there. But anyway,
You've got
I have a
60
question.
days.
yes, he's got 60 on the top and then 30. Okay, the legislative body, he's talking about the last 30 days of it.
All right.
See, I'm talking about down at the bottom there. 207. Okay, got that recall question. 209.
Okay, on the 208 thing, I just have a question. So let's say that somebody was in office, was reelected, and then before September 1st, I mean, like, in time that we would need to take action, they pass away or something. They've just been reelected, and then they pass on.
The only mechanism.
If the legislature replaced that seat, would it be for the remainder of that person's?
No, until the next general election.
General election.
You know, vacancy. The county commission would appoint until the next
General election.
general election.
Okay.
The, 209.3C, let me see what that says. An ordinance pursuant to section 203. I've got, should that be 202J? That's something I found, I don't know.
That's right.
Is that 202J?
B deals with 202I.
Okay.
C was 203B.
Okay, you got it right?
I've got 203B there. I guess your question is, should it be 202J?
Yeah,
Um,
that was my, I got 209.3C.
yeah.
should that be 202J?
My understanding is, and this was based on Knox County's original draft, that it was supposed to be addressing the provision that dealt with redistricting into B. But I'll go ahead, I'll take another look at that. If two J is the section that deals with committee members on lower boards.
Right.
Subcommittees, yeah.
But it seems, I don't know, this is one of these late night comments I've got here. Otherwise, we are asking for a 2/3 vote to redistrict. Because the one section is talking about redistricting. And the redistrict laws of the state only need to pass the county commission by a majority. We just went through that process. That's what, I think that was the confusion I had, is that we're imposing a 2/3 vote on a redistricting, reapportionment. But anyway, if you'll check that one, Gavin.
In that regard, can I ask you?
Yes.
If it's determined that you want to keep it to be a majority, do you want 202J to require 2/3 majority?
What is 202J? Let me find that. Is that the, that's one we just talked about?
Right.
Okay. When we remove, going back to 202J, like we're talking to, removing someone from a committee, not county commissioners, not an elected official, just an appointed committee member, what he's asking is, do you want that 2/3 vote there by county commission to remove that person, or do you want just a simple majority? It's silent on that now.
And I kind of think if there's really good cause, 2/3 majority is not gonna be an issue. I mean, it's not gonna be a problem.
The way we've done it in committee, like on the beer board, we do it within the beer board itself. That we vote if you miss 3 without cause, or,
Those are bylaws.
yeah, we remove from that committee, and then we, but then, we got to open it, and try to find some place.
So, do you want the standard for removal from a committee? It doesn't specify, do you want that to be majority or 2/3 vote, or have it encompassed in the county commission rules that we referenced there earlier? Let them decide.
I kind of agree with Steve, 2/3, you know, if you want to take somebody out, you don't want them to be politically in any.
No, not at all.
So, I like the 2/3.
Got
Yeah,
that?
because I mean, if a person has clearly violated the rules, I mean, they missed 4 meetings in a row, and the rule is 3,
And that's what
Is
I
that-
did on beer board.
the vote's gonna be pretty clear cut.
209-4A. Okay, when the legislative body is voting, and somebody, you know, we use our voting system, it's got a button on there to abstain. If a person has an abstention for cause, which we know is different, that lowers the majority vote count. Do they need to state that before the vote is taken? I normally ask them, or they come to me before the meeting and say, I'm going to abstain, the reason I'm going to abstain. And then when the chairman or the parliamentarian asks me, I'll say it's for cause. But if you want them, right now it says, each member of the legislative body present shall distinctly, audibly, visually cast his or her vote, and the county clerk shall record in writing each member's vote as yea, nay, or abstain. It really probably should, the recording in the minutes should state abstention for cause.
Okay.
Because that is a big issue. Some people just don't want to vote on an issue and they abstain, that's fine, but,
That's really a no vote.
It's really a no
Exactly.
vote. if
But,
it's abstain.
the abstention for cause, the consequences are fairly large because it does lower that vote count for a majority. So, do you want them to state it ahead of time, or, we certainly want the clerk to put it in the minutes that is abstention for cause. That needs to be added to A.
I believe the current state law, if you're abstaining for cause, requires you to make that statement before.
I believe you're right.
That's the conflict statement, which could, in some situations, produce an abstention for cause. But
Well, you can't have people just making up the cause.
no, that's why most of the time, and not always, they'll come to me and tell me, this is the fact pattern, what do you think, is that for cause? Some of them are ongoing issues where they may be a county employee, their wife may be a county employee, we've had that before. But I do think it needs to be recorded in the minutes as an abstention for cause, because
Absolutely. It has to, because it changes the vote requirement.
if they do not make the statement, abstention for cause, I'm abstaining for cause, we are assuming without any further direction that is just a basic abstaining vote. Okay? Everybody understand what we're getting at?
It's,
One of the things that I encountered on election day, and this was a big thing in our district, is about abstaining or voting where there's a conflict. In other words, if you work for the county and the people that came to me was very upset about this law, I'll speak about the charter, is that if, say for instance, you work for the sheriff's department and you vote on your own budget, or if you work for any other, in your elected official, if you work for the motor pool or whatever, and you vote on your own budget, it should be an abstention, not even just saying, I work for them, and then, but in vote anyway, that it should be just a direct abstention that you can't vote on.
The current law is you can't vote.
Well, it was just amended
Yeah.
to go back to the old phrase, to read. I thought we had it worked out, it worked well, when it was a simple analysis by the commission member. If it put money in your pocket, that's the way I explained it to them, you can't vote on it. So, but then they amended it some time ago and said, okay, you can't vote on that specific department budget, but you can vote on the entire budget. So you have a teacher, that's where it came up before a lot of times. But years ago, they had a statement you needed to read, and that statement was basically a cure-all. Okay, if you read this statement, you can vote. And they've gone back to that. So I don't know the reasoning why, but I sure do wish the General Assembly would get something set in
I think
stone.
that's where the conflict come from, because
It
that's
does.
the way, since 2010, used to, you couldn't vote at all, and then it was changed to where you could as long as you read the statement. So I think that's where,
The statement's pretty old.
Yeah.
I was one of the first that, and they, on the, 2002, 2005, and we got a ruling that said I could vote on the education budget because I was an educator and working for the system prior to being elected.
That's the real old version of it.
I know it.
That was when we had to decide if you were
Yeah.
working before you were county commissioner, or you were county commissioner before you were working.
That's right.
That was the analysis back then.
And then we had a statement that
That's right.
I had to read.
Yeah, those laws have all been changed multiple times.
Yeah.
What,
In the
what
last
I
5
need you to do
years.
though is, if you looked at that one that was just passed,
Yes.
you got it good. It's convoluted. I don't know. They complicated. They've got 3 different sections there, and you've got to read them close to understand exactly what kind of conflict they're talking about. And they're not all the same. So, but anyway, that was new to us this year, but we're back to that statement that you can say and then you can vote. Personally, I liked it better where you couldn't vote on anything that put money in your pocket. I felt like that was a real simple analysis, and then we move forward. But Gavin, just make sure that's compliant, and that's off my whole question there.
For the record, that's section 708D, and we don't have to look at it right now.
Good.
So So it's already covered?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I remember it being in there.
The most recent, it just passed, I mean, this isn't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since July 1st.
yeah, I think was it even April first? It's just passed this past General Assembly.
I believe that's correct.
Right.
I'll double check.
708, is that what that was?
708D 32.
I'm on 2094D.
What page, Jim?
I'm on 12.
Oh,
It's got, and this is basically the county clerk's duties, but upon the adjournment of each and every meeting of the legislative body, it shall be the duty of the county clerk, or Annette Pruitt, to maintain and preserve meeting, and it says preserve unchanged as public records available for inspection during reasonable office hours. The voting record for each and every ordinance, emergency ordinance, and resolution. Well, we have motions that are not covered here. And I think we need to possibly, let's see, add meeting minutes, because that's really what they are talking about, the records. The records would be, of course, these things that are listed here as resolutions, ordinances, emergency ordinance, all that, but that doesn't cover, if you look at our minutes, there's a lot of stuff that pops up there, and it's simply motions. And I'd like to make sure those are recorded, and then that term meeting minutes inserted, and then what was the other deal there, D? And also record, you see that note I've got here? Got insert meeting minutes and records, and also record all motions. But that's what she's doing right now. This is not adding anything to Annette's work or anything to anybody that's had that job before, but it's just carrying on exactly the way we do business. We always record every motion and the vote count. And if we're expending county funds, then we always go to the board. And it's never a voice vote. So we just want to make sure that everything is recorded that we do. And you know, sometimes like Regina, the trustee, has to spread upon the minutes, be released from the taxes, or Gary has to put his equipment list. Those are non-votes. There's not even a motion made. They're just spread upon the minutes. So all that would be covered under records, I think.
Now, if we had a circumstance where like the board stopped working, we could still have a roll call.
Of course, she's done that many
Yeah.
times. When Annette goes into the meeting, she's ready for that to occur. She's got a section of she's got printed out ballots, and she'll do, say if it's expending revenue, she'll do a roll call vote, individual, and we'll say yea or nay. And she records that. That becomes the official record when she certainly produces the minutes. Okay. This is an interesting question. This may come, it's like a Steve Mead question. 209B4. Can ordinances be published on the county website rather than a newspaper of general circulation? Is that coming from state law?
That
Okay.
is, that's coming right from
So-
the charter
Yeah.
statutes.
So that's the answer to that is no.
I'm saying
Can
in
we do it?
addition.
Yes, in addition, yes.
Yeah.
What you're gonna find out, some of these ordinances, they've got to be printed in the newspaper. It's not just the heading.
Yeah.
This is expensive. We do a lot of publication for delinquent taxes in our office, and I'm shocked some of the prices we're getting back. It's very expensive to publish a large document verbatim in the classified section or public notice section of these papers. So, but anyway, that's the way the statute's written. We're gonna have to continue with that, but I do like the idea of adding it to our website. I want the citizens to be able to go to our website, see our meeting agendas, see past meeting minutes, agendas, and also any large item. We've got, if you look at our main page there, they've still got the annexation agreement that we did back in 2006. And those affect a lot of people and a lot of documents that are historical value for our citizens. I'd like them to be able to go there, click it, and see what it looks like years gone by.
If I can add just one
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
I want to specify that the way it's drafted right now is based on the statute. It only applies to penal ordinances. So,
Right.
and I think that leads into the next question. So, penal ordinances have to be published at least once in the newspaper. I'm not sure it's so specific about general ordinances. So, that may be something we can look at.
Yeah, I think what I was reading is, reading it with for, the opening sentence, no ordinance is emergency, ordinance is a resolution, then, where does it say that on page 4? Oh, I see. After passage, all ordinances of penal nature, so that would be anything with a fine?
Correct.
Okay. So a regular ordinance, we wouldn't have to publish the whole thing in the paper?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
This is drafted.
That could seem as much.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Because, first of all, that's most of them.
Yeah, of course, and now remember, there is a requirement in here that the actual caption of that resolution be on the agenda. I think that's very important, that it's just not the subject matter. When you're passing a resolution or ordinance, it's the actual caption line. And that goes back to the Tennessee Constitution that requires state law to have a caption heading. Okay, well, this is a question I had. Explain what the difference is in an ordinance and an ordinance of a penal nature. Because, you know, we're all accustomed to resolution. And help me with that, Gavin. Is there a difference? And I always thought that all ordinances had a punishment or a penal nature to them.
I think the best way to describe a penal ordinance is the second sentence in 209 before. Something imposing a fine or imprisonment as punishment for violation thereof.
But that's good, but what would just a generic ordinance be? Where would we use that instead of a resolution, I think, more than anything? I can see the emergency ordinance. Now, that does not have to have a caption line on the agenda or anything like that, because that's something that truly can come up on emergency, the boiler's out at Daniel Arnold, we've got to move on it.
My understanding was that a resolution, and I guess counties differ in how they govern it, but my understanding was a resolution was less, there's less commitment with a resolution maybe. Like an ordinance is more akin to passing a law, and a resolution is a resolution to do something, if that makes any sense.
I was kind of on the side, I was looking at that distinction, but I was going to say an ordinance tells somebody to do something,
Correct.
and a resolution.
Or not do something.
But in my reading, I noticed, and I think this was in one of your drafts, that the budget would be in an ordinance. Our budget's always on a resolution. You know, we have the appropriation resolution, the taxing resolution, so that's just an interesting
Yeah.
thought.
So all done, change the ordinance instead of resolution, is that correct?
Not necessarily.
You don't get into that again.
Yeah.
Well, regarding that issue, I think it's been changed back to resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
I don't want to be like, I think about our commitment to this. We don't want any big changes. I'm listening to you, and I've never heard of any big changes, but I want to make sure what we've got here works with our system now. That's the big portion. So, if you don't mind, on emergency ordinances, you may have it in here. There's a note that they do not require 2 readings. They do not need to be delivered to commissioners prior to the meeting. That's true, isn't it? Emergency ordinance could pop up on the floor. The mayor could bring something, and this just happened. We need to move on this. So that's not going to be on the agenda, possibly. The heading's not going to be there. It's not going to require 2 readings like a normal ordinance would. And so I'm thinking maybe we need to specify it does not require 2 readings and does not need to be delivered to commissioners prior to the meeting, because right now it says something like that. But anyway, section 210A, that's the veto provision for the county mayor, I think. 210A. Okay, Tennessee law says the mayor cannot veto purely administrative resolutions. This looks like they can. And I've got the code section, it's TCA 5-6-107 there. If it's purely administrative, the language is a little bit different than that in the statute. There's no veto power. And is this veto process, is it different than what's by statute? It looks like it's a bit different. You've got the 10 days in there, but when you add that other 5 days, I think that was Steve that pointed that out, and that was a good catch. Normally, we've got to know what the mayor's going to do within 10 days or it becomes effective. And
So you're talking about B?
yeah, does that add in writing within 5 days? So basically it's saying that the county clerk's got to notify within 5 days of the receipt by the county clerk of the veto. Is that what it's saying?
I just thought the timing there was.
Yeah, I did. I want to make sure that we're staying consistent with the state statute, and I think that's very important there. First of all, we can't change a state statute by charter, and I don't want any more or less days in there if the statute on the state level says no, it's going to be like this. Because on occasion we do have vetoes, but I like as I said before, I like what the mayor does. She always writes a letter that says what her issues were. But
Anytime we state something in so many days, those are calendar days,
yeah.
unless otherwise specifically specified, like for the governor.
they're always
Holidays and Sundays don't count.
Yeah.
Just work day. Work day.
No,
No,
calendar.
calendar days. For a lot of stuff, the governor to veto something, he has 10 days, and it doesn't include holidays or something.
Well, that,
You know, but that's specifically specified.
some courts timelines
Yeah, do that.
doesn't include some holidays, but
I'm saying if it isn't stated otherwise, it's calendar days.
that's right. That's I saw that note from you, but that's the way I've always seen it. Unless it's stated different, it's calendar days. It includes weekends, it includes holidays, unless stated different. Okay, 210D. Is that the same thing? Read that again. I just want to make sure those 2 methods of counting the days are identical from B and D. If you look at that, it's, I think they need to be the same unless there's some justification. Okay. You got it on that one. 303E. That is, it mentions that the mayor can, mayor shall appoint members of all boards, authorities, commissions, departments, and committees, and their appointments shall be subject to approval by resolution of the legislative body. We do that by motion. There's such a distinction. Some people, some counties, and actually Anderson County did it here. I noticed some old minutes. Everything was a resolution, not in the context of what we think, where I draft a resolution on a couple of sheets of paper. It's got a heading, a resolution number. But if you look at some of the old meeting minutes, county commission meeting minutes for Anderson County, it says, be it resolved. Then the next item of business, these are just motions. Be it further resolved. And it goes all the way down through there. So they're saying, following along with the idea that the county commission can only speak to the resolutions is what they were doing back then. So that's interesting thought. So again, it comes back to we do so many things by simple motion. But follow me on that concern anyway, on that one, it's got departments. I've got a note here that those are departments under the control of the county mayor, not any department.
Correct.
Okay, you've got that, I think, somewhere in my thought. We didn't talk about it. The mayor has the absolute right to appoint directors and hire employees for her departments, and the directors are all subject to county commission approval, but she has the right to, or the mayor has the right to terminate at any time, and that's in here. Then somebody asked me about the county commission hire their own secretary. That's in the county commission secretary. Yes, they can. There's a specific provision. This goes back to Mary Murphy was employed by county commission. Then the challenge was made that needs to be under the county clerk. So Annette is assigned. You're actually an employee of the county clerk, right? Assigned to county commission. Is that how it is? So, but anyway, that is added here that the county commission could hire an employee.
Jeff, the county clerk is just actually over my time, my pay, my function.
But also the county clerk
Yeah,
has
you're
the
in the direction.
responsibility of the meeting minutes and keeping those bound and recording and resolutions and here ordinances. So it goes hand in hand, working with the county clerk. I think that's an important distinction. So that, strike departments, if it's not, or add clarity that we're talking about over there. And the mayor's term salary, says the mayor's compensation shall be based upon Tennessee Code annotated 824-102, as may be from time to time amended by the Tennessee General Assembly, and shall be adjusted annually based on statutory requirements. Well, that's when there is an increase for state officials like county commission is what it's talking about. That, I want you to realize that we can move our mayor up, and that is consistent with 24102, to another population bracket. Normally, they're assigned by population brackets. I think we're 3A there, and that's a set standard. That's the minimum standard, okay? So if you wanted to give your mayor a raise, you could move that mayor up. But then remember, that also may trigger your salaries for your sheriff and your highway superintendent. Those all have ties to that mayor's salary. So, but I wanted to make sure, I think we specify that because we've got the statute here.
I thought we covered that.
We did, but I wanted to make sure the wording is what each compensation should be. Okay, it says paid in equal monthly installments. I've got something that I added in it, or consistent with county policy. The county policy is 26 paid checks a year, okay, every 2 weeks. And I believe that's what the mayor gets, so she's not getting 12 equal monthly installments, so that's a lot easier for payroll to work with. Everybody gets paid at the same time, it's on the same cycle, so I just wanna make that distinction I caught,
And that applies to commission as well, because our salary technically is so much a year.
right, and you get paid every
We get
2
paid
weeks.
every 2 weeks.
Okay, all right,
I don't think it's ever been increased for the mayor, has it, since she's been with
never, in fact.
Yeah, it has gone up.
the state?
By
The
state
state,
statute.
because the state has a chart that says mayor and this, then the population brackets, this is the minimum salary.
That's the
But
statute.
she hadn't got up to the point where Rex was at when he left, right? Is that correct?
As far as monetary
Right.
value, yes, but as far as the steps, no. When, we lost Rex, there was a motion to move it back down to the minimums, and that affected, Mayor Wansky, and then subsequently Mayor Frank. So, but yes, I think Mayor Lynch, or Executive Lynch back then, was up 2 steps, but that was allowable under that, and we've got that referenced here, 824-102. And, but anyway, I've just got added instead of paid in equal monthly installments or consistent with county payroll policy. And then, 6, that's the other one, under 3.6, you got a note there, we talked about it. Except those appointed by the county legislative body resolution or contrary to private act. That pops up in a couple different places. You got that? Then, Steve had a comment on law director that we needed to add the reference to the private act, and I've got that, chapter 77 of the private acts of 2006.
That's in there.
Okay, that was one of your changes.
I'm sorry, I neglected to mention.
That's okay, so we've got that in there, there's no problem.
I think that's really kind of critical.
The last thing I've got for tonight is I checked with Dr. Parrott with the school system, all his teachers under the Teacher Tenure Act now. So we were concerned about that. There was a local tenure act at one point and the state tenure act, and it was a little bit confusing, but he's got it, the board and Dr. Parrott's got it worked out. They're all under the state Teacher Tenure Act. So that was a question we had from before. Any questions or anything I can help you with? But I do appreciate your concern, and those that ask me questions, I do appreciate it. If you get any more comments, send them to me, and I'll work with Gavin, and we'll get them, because some of these are really good comments. What we're finding is, you might have one section that conflicts with another section in another area, or you're not reading it exactly by the heading. It may have, like, certainly the committees, boards and committees, I don't want anybody, that's why we started that discussion. I said, this does not apply to county legislative body members. County legislative body cannot remove a member of the county legislative body. Anyway, if you've got questions, let me know. We're running down to the end of it. The only other thing I've got for you tonight is that I need you to study and make a decision on the Declaration of Rights, and that mirrors the Tennessee Constitution, and the listing of the departments and listing of the existing partners, and what do we call them? We don't have, this was long ago. We had them divided by the county mayor, all the county mayors' departments. I had Mayor Frank look at it, and she says that's accurate. Then we recognized all our constitutional officers. This is going back to the Knox County issue, and basically the rule of thumb from Black Wednesday was, if it's not in there, it doesn't exist. Remember, that was a Register of Deeds issue, if I'm not mistaken, so, Lord, I'd hate to leave out Tim or anyone. So that's what we're doing, we're adding this as an appendix. And adding it as an appendix to make sure everyone knows that if this charter passes, these are the departments we have in place. It goes through the constitutional officers, then it goes through the judicial offices, and again, we can't change that. anything in the judiciary. Then it goes to other elected officials, which is the highway superintendent. I did have constables there only because we do their elections, but technically they're state officers. They're not controlled in any way by the county commission.
Yeah, but doesn't it kind of have to be listed because they're elected in our election?
That's why it's in here.
Yeah.
And it says other elected officials.
Jay,
Yes, sir.
do you have additional copies of that?
Yeah. I've got a few. I handed out a bunch.
Commissioner White?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Commissioner White can have mine. I got 3 here. 4.
What, you don't have a copy of the
Oh, of course.
charter that we have for
Sir.
9D?
That's Jerry. That's the current draft. And I'll write at the top, there's been so many, I just put the date, 8/8/12 there, so that's where the file was. Then, I don't know that this is needed, they've got the mandatory offices and, established by Tennessee law. Those are your election administrator, finance director, law director, purchasing agent, school director. Those are all referenced by Tennessee law. Then we've got discretionary departments. It's got alternatives to incarceration. We've moved that to the sheriff's office now. ACTV, that's a combined joint resolution between the county commission and the school board. Drug court is basically a grant program that we've had for many years that Ms. Gadd manages and does a super job. Human resources and risk management, IT, which is Brian, and I don't know what we'd do without Brian. That was a really good move. Then we've got judicial commissioners there, and juvenile probation. That's under the juvenile judge. And some people question that, but there is an AG opinion that the juvenile judge can oversee the juvenile probation. The libraries, that was created by resolution of the county legislative body and supervised by the library board. Parks and Recreation is your conservation board. That's a separate set of statutes on the conservation board. Tourism is created by Tennessee law and supervised by the Tourism Council. Veteran Services is Tennessee law supervised by the Veteran Services Advisory Committee. And then I've got some ancillary organizations, and I'm struggling whether or not they're needed, but they would be Allies for Substance Abuse Prevention, Anderson County Economic Development Association, the Chamber of Commerce. These, an ancillary organization either receives direct funding or in-kind donations from the county, is the way that works. Chamber of Commerce, and if you remember, we've got a resolution on the hotel motel occupancy tax that gives a portion of that to the chamber. The Industrial Development Board, we have E911, that's a whole separate entity. The Health Department, and we've got a situation where we don't have a county health department, but we've got a county portion of the state health department. And we have some county employees up there, and they are all under the supervision of the mayor. Even though our director is a state officer here, Mr. Turner, we do supplement that with county employees. And I believe the main issue is the dental program there. We don't want to lose that. The medical examiner position, if you remember the history of that, we converted to the medical examiner from the coroner probably 14 years ago, but it's currently under the Regional Forensic Center. That's a multi-county collaborative type agreement where I believe there's 17 counties involved in it, but mostly there's 5 that put the bill over there, but it's in Knox County. We just got the contract on that in my office this week. Probation, now probation is provided by Tennessee law, but we currently have a contractor, PSI, that does our misdemeanor probation. The state picks up our state probation. Those are usually felony offenders, but misdemeanor probation is under PSI, and the General Sessions Court has the ability to appoint that misdemeanor probation entity. Then we've got the 7th Judicial Crime Task Force. That's a multi-jurisdictional task force that, comes, you have law enforcement officers from the city of Oak Ridge, Clinton, the county, Oliver Springs, Rocky Top, I don't know if Norris contributes, and it's a crime task force, not a drug task force, and they work under the supervision of the district attorney general. Those are usually loaned officers, and most of them are undercover, but it is something that we operate on with a grant. The Child Advocacy Center is right up here at Longmire and 25W. It's a not-for-profit. They do all our forensic evaluations for kids that have been traumatized by crime. Community mediation, CASA, Soul Conservation District, and University of Tennessee Extension Service upstairs. Those are our ancillary organizations. Again, those are ones that receive direct money from the county or in kind, like office space, things of that nature. And I'll probably need to add the new family court. It's becoming very popular down in Oak Ridge to that. That's under the DA, but we see a lot of good things coming out of that family court. But anyway, that's here, and again, I'll clean this up, but if you want to add this as an appendix, that would be my recommendation. And again, that's saying that these are the current departments, offices, Anderson County government, and I hope I've not forgot anything, seriously. So that's why I asked y'all last time, and I'm gonna put this out to other people. Have we forgot something here? And I'd hate to think that we have somebody that forgot, but we'll figure that out. But anyway, that, and then the Declaration of Rights is the two issues that you have before you. And at some point, you need to decide yea or nay if you want those added as an appendix. I would certainly recommend this one titled Incomplete Draft of the departments. I think that's definitely needed, no doubt. Now, the Declaration of Rights, that's totally up to you. I think that's discretionary. There's no reason it is mandatory there. What that is your Tennessee Constitution. Pretty much verbatim, it's set for the changes in the, talks about state, we converted that to county. It's telling you that the rights that under the Tennessee Constitution that all citizens have in Tennessee, all citizens in Anderson County have those same exact rights. Steve actually printed the Tennessee Constitution, and the Declaration of Rights, that's another section. The Tennessee Constitution is quite big, but he's got.
Well, I just got the first article, well, the preamble, then the first article, which is the Declaration of Rights in its entirety. And I got I think I gave most everybody that came a copy of it.
That's
And-
totally discretionary.
And
It's up to you
again,
if you want to include it.
My feeling about this is that I think there is a growing concern by the public in general that the things that are in this Declaration of Rights, that the government is supposed to report to the people, not that people have to report to the government. And that the people are supposed to be in charge of government, not the government rules government. And I think that there's way too many people in Tennessee that don't know what the Declaration of Rights in our Constitution say.
I think what Jay's asking here is that we want to put this as an amendment.
That's it.
Well, as it just
As an appendix.
As an appendix.
Yeah.
I don't think Jerry's got a copy of this one.
You want that accurate on tonight?
Here's a copy
No,
of the actual.
just at some point, you know, I would prefer a vote to take place after we add the third district representative, but, and that's when we have to have a complete vote on it, but those are things, and Steve had brought that. Can you pass this down to Jerry?
Yeah, this is
And
what
this
has changed.
is what has come to me, it
Talks about
an
Anderson.
email, you may have seen an email, what the procedure is going to be for the public to change the charter or add amendment.
Yeah, there's,
It can't be done for 6 years, is that correct, before they can make any changes?
that's the citizen,
That's the review.
the review committee, 6 years. Right.
Now, if they wanna make a change,
Yeah.
what's gonna be the procedure?
It's in here. It's by
Yeah,
referendum.
by referendum.
A referendum, percentage amount of voters that filed a petition.
Yep.
That's correct.
Remember, there's
3 ways.
5 total ways
Five.
that this can be changed.
One's referendum,
Referendums.
one's by 2/3 vote of the county commission, and
Those all result in referendums. The charter commission can ask for a referendum, okay? County commission by 2/3 can ask for a referendum. Citizens can ask for a referendum. Court order, and what was the other one?
Yeah.
We had it listed as 5.
Yeah, the
One slipped
ability
in
of the citizens to control government is expanded substantially.
What was it? Oh, the the charter review committee, every 6 years, it comes
Yeah,
up.
can recommend.
They can go through the entire charter and recommend changes. And the way it works in Oak Ridge, citizens come through and they say, look, we'd like to see this change, and they take some time, and look at it and then recommend something.
Then it goes on the ballot.
Do they have to send that to the city council first, or does it go straight to the ballot?
I think what he's referring to, and this is what I've been looking for too, because I think this was in April, we came back to meet, to write a charter. I made the proposal, and it passed, and I took it to correspond with the state constitution, where it says, in the state constitution, it can be amended one time every 6 years.
We added that to
Yeah.
the charter review
Well,
section.
we passed that,
That's correct.
and now I'm asking, is it?
Is it
Is
for
it-
all those options? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's kind of the way I understood it. It was.
I don't think you got it.
Yeah. State law controls it.
Well, what our
Better,
motion
yeah.
said is that that 6-year period was the charter review
Correct.
committee.
No, it wasn't what we passed.
What'd you pass? What are you saying? But I know you're saying this, the way it's written is that 6 years applies to the charter review committee. Are you saying that you want that 6 years to apply to the other forms that result in referendum? The public, the county commission, and the charter commission?
That's what I
That's all
understood it.
gonna be subject to the 6-year
That's what we
term?
passed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the way I read it.
okay.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Well,
I think so.
So that's gonna need to be changed. And that may be in conflict.
that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
is it in conflict with the
State law. Look at that, because there is
Okay.
a section there. Then, see.
I know that in
Section.
Oak Ridge, some years ago, I was involved in a referendum.
What was that?
And it was every so many years you weren't allowed to do it. Once you did it, you weren't allowed to do it.
What was it, the date of the petition,
Years.
the date?
But I think that the requirement to review it every 6 years is very valid. I think we ought to do that, because it shouldn't go more than 6 years without a full review by independent
That's
people.
right.
Okay.
What he's trying
But
to
for
do
the other
is just
referendums, I don't think it should be,
over and over
I don't think it should be, if you have one referendum, then you can't have another one on any subject for 6 years. It certainly may be on the same subject,
But it can't be
it shouldn't come back up again for a number of years.
Well, the biggest issue is we've got to comply with state law there.
Yeah.
And if it says one thing, it's gonna have to be that way. We can't deviate from state law, and I don't want to. That's my recommendation professionally. But we'll look at that and, make sure we're in compliance with state law. Because I know the intent of ELs was not to be hit with a surge of referendums over and over and over again. And, we've got in there, it's gotta run with the general election, so that would have to be only 2 years, at the worst case scenario.
I
West.
Yeah.
The intent of that,
Was
when
6
I made
years.
it, was that we needed, if this charter passed, that they need to be patient to see whether or not it worked before they started amending.
It might be a
Well,
separate.
first of all, if it passes in November, it doesn't go into effect until 4 years later. Almost.
Right, it doesn't go into effect until 2026.
So the
So if you're
referendum's
asking
couldn't be
about-
done until it came into effect.
Now, are you asking about whether it can be changed between 2022 and 2026?
Yeah.
Or,
That would be my question.
I'd say no, because it's
It's
not.
not effective.
It can't be, it
And
can't
that's
be
because-
amended until after 2026 if it passes.
Well, but remember,
That's when it goes into
that-
effect.
That's not an arbitrary amount, the number that county, the chart commission is adding there. That's what state statute, and the trick was, you can't change it during the term of the county commission. So you might wanna think about that if you go to the alternate 2 years, because at that point, that was a question we had before, but it said this commission, right? So, I don't, you couldn't get around it that way, but basically, it can't go into effect until this newly elected county commission body, okay, in 4 years. And that's why it's like that. It's not some number you came up with. That is the law. And, we talked about that one night, that, that was a long time, but that is the interpretation of the statute.
So then, if there was, after 4 years, there was a referendum, it wouldn't be voted on until 2 more years later.
The next general election.
Thus, it would be 6 years before anything.
That's correct.
Okay.
But,
The big delay is the 4 years before it can go into effect.
That's fine, for a while.
Right. It's, the issue that I thought you were getting at is, once it goes into effect, then you can't change it but every 6 years. And
No, the
that's
first
not the
initial
case.
change-
That's not the way it's written right
No,
now.
after that, it doesn't do that.
No, it's just, that.
Every
just-
general election.
Just,
But that was in the motion.
yes, sir.
And the reason it was, I thought it should follow
The
right
government,
along
or
with
the
the
state
state
constitution, right, I got you. I remember that.
And when he did that, it was before we had this.
Yes,
That's correct. Yeah,
it's been corrected.
I remember that all, but in effect, yes, it's 6 years. But after it goes into effect, you're looking at, that's a little bit different. We'll look at that statute, but I believe they can put a referendum on the ballot every 2 years.
Every general election.
Whether or not we could add a requirement that says, you know, you can only have it on the same subject every 4 or 6 years, I don't know, because remember, that one statute that we looked at said you could only change those 2 variables. That was the limit on the amount of the petition date, and when it, had to be to the election commission with your numbers, signatures on the petition. And, the other one was, it was just those 2 dates, wasn't it? That was all you could change, so, I'd say the answer is no, that you can't impose that the citizens could come back and basically put a referendum on the ballot, every 2 years. But I don't see Oak Ridge having that issue. I don't see Clinton having that issue. They have their review committees, and if they wanna change something, then, it comes out, when they have the charter review commission, and that would be 6 years, but you never know around here, it's liable to get out there and get the signatures or something.
Well, it won't be as easy as it used to be.
Again, when we get to the referendum section, that's controlled by state law. I mean, there's not much, there's only those 2 variables, I believe, is what it said, that we can change, so we're not gonna conflict with state law, and that's just the way it is.
I think that's gonna be one of the big issues that Butler has.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure what I'm hearing is that the 6-year delay at the very beginning is primarily because of this 4-year delay required by state law for the
In the next
implementation
general
term.
election.
Right. And
And
it's
then,
not
then
arbitrary
after,
by
once
the body.
once it's in place, then it's every general election that you can have a referendum.
That's right.
And we have anything else?
That's it.
So you don't want people to think that it's only every 6 years
That,
Initially, it's six, and then every two.
because of the delay in the.
and then when's your next meeting that you've got publicly noticed?
11?
Yeah,
that's tomorrow.
Thursday.
Okay. All right,
And it's
We need
at
a
5
meeting
o'clock
on
upstairs.
do we need a meeting Thursday?
I can have these changes as quick as possible. I think I can get them out there.
I don't know if there's something that we need to go through. We're at that point where I keep coming back that I'd rather have this full body here. We start making votes, I'd like to see every district represented here. And, we're not gonna be able to get that accomplished until next week at the county commission.
We won't meet this coming Thursday, or the next one is on the 16th, that's on the Tuesday after commission.
I think that's an important day.
That'll be the last
Very-
one I attend.
Right, that's a very important day, and that'll give us all a chance to meet our new person. That'll give us a chance to get them up to speed on the current draft, and me to send them all the other information leading up to it. Look, again, as soon as that person is appointed, I'll get their email address and start forwarding where we're at on it. But I do believe that the 16th is an important day, especially that'll be the last time we have Commissioner Meade here. And I want his vote. So we may be looking at, I'd love to have a final vote on this with the full body here.
17th. Will you be here on the 17th?
Nope. Like the 16th is the last one I do. I got commitments up in Michigan that I made a year
Yeah,
ago.
you told us that. So I think 16th is the important meeting.
But if we want to take care of a few details on this Thursday, that's perfect. I mean, I can be here Thursday night, I can be here on the 16th. We just want to do that.
We're
via
caught up
email.
on edits. I'll take another strong look at it, and I know some of y'all will too. But I can't think of anything right now that we need to do this week, but I can think of a lot of things that need to be done at 16th meeting, and possibly even at 17th, but I'd love to have it done while Commissioner Meade's here.
I have a question on this, section 7.22. Is this actually, we're actually adopting the state traffic?
No, the highway law?
Yeah.
No, that's for Gary Long. He's under that.
Okay.
And that's good.
Meeting for Thursday.
So,
It was another really minor.
you're thinking that from the law that the
Yeah.
sheriff's office enforces.
That'll have to be done by ordinance.
Right now, we're not putting any ordinances in it, right? We're gonna let, county commission, legislative body, put all the ordinances in it. We're not gonna adopt. We're just setting the framework for, the uniform traffic law or anything like that we wanna do. When you talk to citizens about this and what changes are made and the way we do business now, I think that's one issue that we should make the distinction. It gives us the ability to adopt ordinances, or in a sense, what we call penal ordinances. And those will allow our law enforcement entities, they'll allow our building commissioner, some other areas to write citations. And those citations, we lose a lot of revenue as it stands now, working off TCA, sending it down to Nashville. When we adopt ordinances, basically the same infraction, we're keeping that revenue here locally, and that can support our public safety, our public service aspect. And I think that is a big issue. Referendum is another issue that allows the citizens to have that voice, not just we have certainly a democracy. We've got great county commissioners that listen to their constituents. And I don't have a lot of people ever call my office for a referendum because they trust a county commissioner in their district, and they come forward with these ideas. And we see it on operations all the time. These are all community ideas that have come from you or Tracy or whoever's on, Josh, or whoever's on the county commission. Those are ideas that citizens come up to our elected members of the legislative body and say, hey, I'd like to see this, and they bring them forward. That system works, and that's because we've got great county commissioners. But that referendum process is different. That's another thing. It allows, I guess, the citizens to have another avenue to shape and form their government, a little bit different without control of the county commission or the democracy that we have. It's kind of different. You're not going to see this on the federal level or state level other than a constitutional change. But it is something that is there, and also the recall portion. So those three things are different. A lot of this stuff people look at and they'll look at the procedures and say, we've never done that before. And I'll say, yes, we have. That's the way we operate. A lot of the stuff that Gavin's got in here is just a reiteration of Tennessee law. And people have never realized that that's the controlling law because they finally see it in black and white. And so I think that's some of the confusion. They're not anything new. In fact, one of the things you sent me, Steve, is this, you kept asking, is this the way we do it now? Is this new? Because you wanted to know. That's real important. When a citizen comes up to you and you try to explain this thing, what's new? And I think those are.
I think in some cases, the way it's described has changed a little bit, because now it reflects the way we're actually been doing business.
That's what we did today. A lot of those changes were just to make sure we didn't have conflicting areas there, and also to make sure the terminology is what we do today. That's something that I'm always concerned about. I don't want any big changes on anything that we do.
Well, we could have the changes, Gavin, by Thursday.
Absolutely.
I think it's also important to point out to folks that when you get into this charter and you start going through the section on all the different departments, as best as we can tell, we haven't changed the way they do business on anything, with the exception of the sheriff being where I take it to be a couple of little money, but generally the way they run their departments and the way it's funded and the way everything is done is just like we've been doing. We didn't really change anything except those opportunities provided by charter form of government to do like ordinances and emergencies.
That's a very good way to put it.
I think with the Declaration of Rights and the offices that you got listed here, I think that's something that we could vote on Thursday as well.
Well, we won't have that other representative here, District 3.
But that would be first reading. And it would also be,
We don't need a first reading. You don't need a first reading.
when you got a choice to make.
What we're looking at is the goal
Well,
of
wait a
a
minute,
final vote.
Lee can be here on the 16th.
Yes, sir. I know.
My wife is saying that you just went off the air.
It did at 6:30, yes. It was scheduled to go off, but I'm still recording the rest of it.
And tomorrow would be on totally.
So,
Tomorrow's off, but we can go Thursday. What, help me with this.
Thursday's the next date.
Okay.
that's what I'm
Your
asking.
question is it needed? I don't know.
Well, if we have the meeting on the day after tomorrow, it would allow us to clear up any little things that then we wouldn't have to address on the 16th when we have our new government.
Fine with me, whatever you want to do. My issue is I want that final
Shake your head
vote of
sometime.
all commission districts
Bring it up on
represented.
the 11th.
Well, I was gonna wait till we got the other paperwork.
Get them to show.
But I mean, we can continue the discussion on Thursday. I'm fine with continuing our discussion we're having tonight. I think we've got a lot of things clarified.
I'm glad we're getting some
Input.
input from the asking questions of members here, county commissioners, and that's always great.
I would say we meet on Thursday.
So we're on for Thursday.
Thursday at 5.
Thursday at 5, and we're upstairs.
Upstairs.
Upstairs at 5?
It'll be wherever we find out for sure at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I probably won't be here that night, but Gavin will be here. That is we've got a 2-day delinquent tax state association meeting in Franklin, so I'll have to attend that. But anyway, I'll be, if you need me, call me on the phone. I'll certainly be available at that time. But I won't be here in person. You're welcome to call me on the phone.
Any other?
No, I got a minor grammatical thing I was gonna bring up where it says that if it would increase the pay of benefits of that member, I think it should have been pay or benefits instead of
What
of.
section?
Page 32. In the conflict of interest thing, if it would increase the pay or benefits instead of benefits. Pretty minor commercial thing. And here, I just wanted you to help me understand how this 5-day receipt by the county program works.
Yeah, that's the.
I don't really understand how that's supposed to work.
Gavin is looking at the distinction between A and D. If they're computing the same, talking about the veto power, he's gonna get back with us on that issue. That's all we've got, sir.
Anything else? Not gonna get a motion.
Second.
Do adjourn.
Thank y'all, every one of you.
When this is re-aired when this is re-aired, will it include the whole meeting?
Yes, sir. Yes, it will. When it's uploaded tomorrow, it will.